Hello, friends. I don't know if you can hear it this week, but we've got a little bit of the background of the Augusta music because it is the Masters. And this is the TBA Legislative Podcast. Brad Lampley here with Ashley Harbin. Ashley, as the shadows lengthen over the Georgia pines. It also mimics what we're going through with the Tennessee legislative session. Oh, by the way, Berkeley is not with us this week, so you've got the B crew, but Ashley,
that's right.
well,
Berkeley's probably at the Masters right now.
She probably is. She probably is at the Masters. I think that's what she probably does. That probably goes every year. She's probably got a permanent badge. At least that's what we'll imagine.
Okay, so bring us back a souvenir. But I see you've already got your Masters swag on.
I do. I have a Masters swag. I got a call this morning from our managing partner, Giff Thornton, who was actually at the course. You what you do is you make a list of people that you want to call because you can't take your phone in, right? And so he made a list. Nobody remembers anybody's numbers anymore. He had a list of cell phone numbers to call because there is this bank of phones and you pick it up and you can dial any number in the country and you just get a call. It's unfortunate. Last year, my wife said when I called her from the Masters, she said it showed up on the phone as Masters, which is cool. This showed up as Augusta, Georgia, as what it did. Giff was curious about that. So
not as cool, but still cool that he called from there.
Right. And let's just be honest. My wife might have been exaggerating. She might have just said associate Augusta with Masters. It doesn't matter. You get a call from Augusta, Georgia. It's really cool. And so anyway, but yeah, you cannot have your phone on club property as a former 16-time PGA Tour winner learned yesterday, because I guess Mark Calcavecchi got thrown out of Augusta. So they're very strict about that kind of thing. I love
very strict. Yeah, Brad, I have not been in about 10 years, so it's really time for me to go back. But it's always during session. And always. For those of you who don't know, Brad is technically my boss, and he would prohibit me. He would prohibit me from taking time away from the legislative session to go to the Masters. So I just have to watch it on TV now.
That sounds good, and you keep telling yourself that. If I were really your boss, you'd be at the office instead of working from home.
Well, that's a good point. But it's my home office, and
one
so we got a nice
businessman says somebody. Who was it that got asked? I don't know if it was Bill Gates or somebody. No, it wasn't Bill. It might have been Bill Gates. I think it was Elon Musk was asked about employees from, or maybe it was Jamie Dimon. I don't know, but employees working from home, where their company goes along with that policy. And he says, no, we don't allow it. They'll just have to go pretend to work someplace else, which was a great line. So, which actually I know you don't subscribe to, but hey, here we are.
I do not.
So we have reached the point in session where the focus has really shifted on to the financial piece of that, being a former Senate staffer and still having very much being in the room with a lot of your good friends when all this happens. I was going to have you walk us through the legislative process about the budget. By the way, for those of you that are breathlessly awaiting news on the TBA bills, the last bill that we had, the foster parent bill, House Bill 2350, that passed the House this week, 77-16. So that completes the TBA tranche of bills this year. They have all passed. We're squared away 3 for 3. And so thanks to all of you for your help. And so all the TBA bills are done and a lot of bills are done. And so now we move into the budget time. So Ashley, walk us through what's going on to get the state budget and why that's important, because it's just about the last thing that happens before they adjourn.
Yeah. So let's take a few steps back. So the budget amendment dropped last week, Brad. Am I getting that correct? Yeah. So the budget amendment, the governor dropped his amendment to the budget. And so everyone's always eager to see what's in the amendment. I think Brad said it best, which was this year it's just pure vanilla or plain vanilla, which is exactly what Commissioner Bryson said. So just not a lot of money to work with, right? But as far as next steps, what this looks like is so what will happen this weekend is the Senate leadership and the House leadership will meet. We don't know, Saturday, Sunday. I think I have a good idea what day, but I won't mention that.
And you know where they're meeting. Come on now. I mean, an undisclosed location, you know where it is.
Undisclosed location. I can't give away too many secrets or else they won't tell me all these things. But so they'll meet, Brad, and they'll get together, and the House will put forth the House's priorities and the Senate will do the same. And they will essentially negotiate on what ultimately becomes the budget that passes. So yes, they have the governor's original budget, they have the governor's amendment, and that's all well and good, but it ultimately comes down to Senate and House leadership. So that meeting will take place, and that's when the budget is decided. From that meeting on, there's no more negotiation or wiggle room, despite what other members may think or lobbyists like us may think. So what's decided this weekend will be the budget that passes.
And there's enough people in the room to where they won't release it and then have, say the larger body of legislators come back and say, no, I don't like that. I mean, once leadership has come and the white smoke has come out of the Sistine Chapel relative to the budget, that's it, right? That's really the problem.
That's exactly right.
And to go a step further, so you'll see all this, all these amendments filed and all these floor debates and so forth. There might be 20 different amendments from the opposing party filed, but a lot of that's just political theater, right? Because the fact of the matter is, this budget is the budget, and even if the governor doesn't like it, there's not a lot, I'm guessing, that he can do at that point. Is that fair to say?
No, that's exactly right. So what happens this weekend, the budget is baked, so to speak, and that's what they're passing. So as far as next steps, Brad, we have so the House Finance Committee, it'll go through the sub and then the full committee, and then Senate Finance. The budget will go through that committee, and then it'll shift to the House floor and the Senate floor. So timing wise, we're expecting that to drop Tuesday. And then it's typically heard the next day or the day after. So we're looking at a budget passed by Thursday at the latest.
Well, and that's consistent with it. I'm checking my calendar right now, Ashley. The date that we were told by somebody who would know is that he said, looking at April 22nd or 23rd, that would be, the 23rd would be a week from next Thursday. So, and that's the other thing, Ashley. Once that budget passes, then lobbyists start to get nervous if they still have a bill that's floating around out there, because they could just adjourn whenever they wanted to. Now, truthfully, there's usually about a week to go, right? But they could. I mean, that's the one constitutionally required duty that they have. So they could go home once they pass that budget.
That's we don't. They take about a week to wind things up, and that's what we're hoping takes place this year. But it's also that time of year, Brad, where Senate and the House start butting heads a little bit, and then there's some horse trading going on of, you didn't pass this bill, so we're not going to pass this bill, or what bills may go to conference committee. So that is typically what we're left with after the budget passes.
So, and this will go back because so many of us are interested in the professional privilege tax, which is a huge irritant. It's a big, legislative priority for TBA, and will be for sure in 2027 with the new governor. But I can tell you this weekend coming up, okay, the smoke-filled rooms, the undisclosed location, whatever it is, where they decide the budget, that is the situation where I think in probably 2018, 2019, maybe 2021, where, we went into the weekend, those of us that hate the professional privilege tax, thinking, okay, the governor is going to at least do a reduction in the process of going to a phase out. And then all of a sudden, after this weekend, it got changed. And then the legislature's version was different than the governor's version. And there wasn't a lot that could be done with it. You're busy at that point calling legislators going, hey, what was the deal? And I even one year was like, well, yeah, we just decided to take, instead of taking out everybody across the board by half, they said, well, or by $100, they said, well, we just thought we would just cut out physicians as a thank you for what they did in COVID. Well, it's hard to argue against that. But the fact of the matter is there was no response to that. It hit, it was done. And, at that point, you're just kind of left to deal with it and hope to get them next year. So I think what's interesting for those of us that are even casual followers will be what is in the governor's budget. And we've talked about this a little bit. What's in the governor's budget now and in the budget amendment that the legislature may have different ideas about.
And we've had some of those meetings with members of House Finance, I'm thinking specifically, where we've heard a couple of comments about, we want to be respectful for the governor's last budget, but also we're stripping a lot of this out. So that it'll be interesting to see, because I do think there is something about respecting the governor's last budget wishes, but also, we were in a room with one member and they said, we want to have money for the new governor. And so we want to set that new governor up for success. And I thought that was a great point. I didn't even really think about. So it'll be interesting to see.
I'll once again give the Jack Johnson line, your old boss, Jack Johnson, about what did he say last year was great. The governor brought us a great budget and we improved it. And so that's right. What we'll see again. And so, we've talked about that a lot on this podcast, but it's always, that's as intriguing as it gets this time of year, other than maybe some chamber on chamber rivalries between the House and the Senate, and then ultimately who budgets. You also have this time of year a little bit of conference committees, and where the House and Senate pass a different version of the same bill and they can't agree. They will refuse to refuse to accept their actions of the House or whatever, or if you refuse to secede from their own actions. I'm missing the word, but you'll see it come up, and then they'll appoint a conference committee. Walk us through that process, if you can even remember back when you were a Senate staffer, about how all that went down. It felt like a lot of times that cake was baked, and by the people that were appointed to the conference committees, it was knew which way it was going to go. But walk us through that.
So when you get to that point, so the House Speaker selects, we'll just say 5 people, and then the Senate selects 4 or 5 people. And really, I think what's happening is not necessarily the members of that conference committee. I think it's the House Speaker and the Lieutenant Governor's office are ultimately deciding what that bill becomes. Because if you know, Brad, what's adopted in the conference committee report is what they call it. That's the bill that becomes law. So that report is the bill that comes out of it. So, and at that point, both sides, both House and Senate, both chambers, they're going to vote on the conference committee report. So, I think those decisions happen in the corner offices of the 6th floor and the 7th floor.
Yeah, it's a fascinating process. And then, of course, in terms of high profile bills that are left, I think, obviously folks are following the PBM bills. There's been a barrage of advertising by CVS and some of those that are similarly situated in terms of this is a bad bill. A lot of strong support within the legislature, including both speakers are co-signers on that bill. So that's one to look out for, what happens with that bill. In the Senate, it's Bobby Harshbarger is the sponsor of that. In the House, it's Rick Scarborough from Oak Ridge. So that was one to watch. You've also got, some just interesting other bills, a lot of AI stuff going on. And a lot of that is, fights as we get down the stretch here, things about protecting kids, AI chat bots that might be causing harm to kids and so forth. And so some of that might be interesting to keep an eye on as we come down the stretch. But, other than that, Ashley, I'm sure I'm missing something. We've got the immigration bills that will obviously get the protests.
Certificate of need, Brian.
Certificate of need.
You can't forget about that one.
Cannot, that's why I wish I would have had a list ready to go. But I think those are, anything else that you can think of that might be big, high profile?
I think we're hearing a lot about the money transmitter bill, just because of the effect that could have on digital transactions like Venmo or PayPal or so, they took the banks out of it, but we're hearing a lot from the other groups about, charging that $10 transaction fee. And so basically how it would work is if you're here in Tennessee, the question in committee this week was, if you're based here in Tennessee and I'm sending someone money in Germany, even though my bank account is here and maybe that person's bank account is here, does this bill affect them? And so, and I will say that the testimony from the panel and the testimony from the committee attorney was not very clear. So I think we're going to see some more discussion on that one. But I think on the House side, it's done. And so goes through finance in the Senate. But I think that one's garnered a lot of attention this week.
Yeah. And one other committee that got a lot of attention this week is sort of the last one we'll touch on is Senate Commerce, Chairman Paul Bailey out of Sparta. That committee had been closed for 2 or 3 weeks. Actually 3 weeks, I believe. It reopened this week to deal with the final probably 50, 60 bills that we had. A couple of interesting bills, got some testimony at the end. So a lot of times they save the best for last. There was an interesting step therapy bill about whether that ought to be covered by health insurance entities. And so that got some testimony against from Blue Cross, and actually that bill prevailed. But then they came back to testify on a subsequent bill that actually went ahead and they were able to get killed on that particular bill, and that was the downcoding bill that had been supported by the Tennessee Medical Association. So kind of a mixed bag there for the insurance entities, but it was interesting to listen to the various policy arguments on both sides of those, both the step therapy and then of course, also the other one on downcoding. So anyway, that's for us political nerds, that's fun to watch. For the rest of you, you're probably like, okay, wait, we'll turn on Sports Center or whatever.
They'll turn on the Masters. They're ready to
turn on the Masters. That's exactly right. So that about wraps up for this week. Next week will be an entirely different world, and we'll see what happened with the budget, and we'll have a lot to talk about. But Ashley, anything we're missing?
I think we've covered it, Brad.
Well, if you all cut this on Thursday, there's a good chance you won't see me. So I'll hand it over to the capable hands of you and Berkeley, and I'm sure you guys will do much better. But anyway, I wouldn't say I'll miss you, but I doubt I will. And then we'll see in 2 weeks, and maybe that'll be the day that we adjourn. So who knows?
That's right.
Yeah.
So yeah, but we'll make up some trip that you're on next week, Brad. Who knows where I'll say that you are, but I'll make sure it's a good one. Make up some.
Whatever you make up might be right this coming week. We'll have to wait and see. But anyway, all right, that's it. Enjoy the Masters, everybody. I would play the music, but apparently Hank says it's not coming through the speakers very well. So hopefully Hank can lay down a soothing bed of music, and I can do my best Jim Nance, wishing you adieu from a tradition unlike any other, the TBA Legislative Podcast.
Bye, everyone.